I've never been a believer in the Western medicine, culture. Not because they're all bad. I think doctors are great for like surgeries and emergencies. But like you think you'd go into a doctor and have the same experience I have coming to you. Like that's my expectation.
Right.
Like this is my person. You're my primary.
Right.
You're supposed to care for me.
Right.
You're supposed to come up with ideas and like help me figure it out.
Yeah.
What's issues. But it's just not the case.
It's not the doctor, it's how their hands are tied. They want to run tests, they want to do different things. The insurance companies say you can't do that, it costs too much, or they don't have all of the right symptoms. Meri, thank you for joining me on the Everyday Health Mom podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
I am excited to have you here. You and I have been working together now for a year and a half, 2 years. I think we've known each other for 2 years, working together closely for the last year and a half.
Yep.
So for those of you that don't know, Meri is part of the marketing and social media content team for my business, Liquavita. So Meri and I have been working closely together on really all things health and wellness for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's been exciting. I hope it's been exciting for you to see the journey with Liquavita.
Yeah.
I know I've been excited to see your health journey throughout the process at Liquavita too.
Yeah.
So can we start with, as the co-owner of Pink Shark and I think, as a superwoman, I think as a superpower, as a co-owner of a business for a woman, that's especially hard to do. So how did you get to Pink Shark?
Well, how did I get to Pink Shark? I first moved to Naples in that same year that we've met. And I was looking for a business to launch, and I didn't know what it was going to be, but I know I moved down here to find that. And so I did a lot of networking just because I didn't know anybody. And so I spent all day, every day DMing people, going to door to door and trying to launch something, anything. And I've always been into marketing. My background was partially in marketing for high fashion luxury goods in store. And so I know I was always very creative. And long story short, I DM'd. Let me backtrack a little bit. So I was trying to launch a fashion styling company because that's what I knew. I was like, okay, I can do this here, and just until I figure out what else I want to do. So I ended up DMing Greg, and I never knew who he was. I just DM'd. He was like on my list. I was like, hey, Greg from Naples Lifestyle Magazine. I was like, I'm looking for, do you know anybody who'd be interested in fashion styling? This is what I offer. And he's like, well, let's meet for lunch tomorrow and let's talk about it. I was like,
Greg.
So Greg.
So Greg.
It's like the epitome of Greg. And I was like, okay. And so we met up the next day at the cafe on Fifth Avenue and had like a long conversation. And then at the end of it, he's like, why don't you work at Naples Motorsports? They're looking for a marketing person. And then you can get integrated with their community and maybe you can find clientele through that way. And so he connected me to who was I think the manager at the time there. And so I went, got the job, started working there. And honestly, in hindsight, it's funny because that's really where I've built and met a lot of my friends, like Luara, the Tea Lounge. I met her through the events there. Pretty much a lot of people I know today.
Right.
And so, and then I got to explore more marketing tactics through there. I remember I was in charge of the cars and coffee, and so they were complaining about nobody was coming there, and so it was like on my shoulders to find people. I was like, okay. So I went and grabbed all the magazines in the city, like Naples Lifestyle Magazine, whatever I could find. And I went through every single page and I DM'd everybody on the pages. Yep. And if I found their name, DM'd them like, hey, we're having an event, come. And so it ended up being like one of the biggest crowded events like they had in like years, in like a dead season. And so I kind of got my foot in the door that way. And so a few months later, not few, maybe like 6 or 8 months later, I decided my time was done there and I was like ready to explore my own journey. I didn't know what the plan was, honestly, but I knew that my time was done there.
Right.
And so I put my 2 weeks in and I left and I had like 3 weeks to figure it out. I was like, okay. And so Mason, my boyfriend, he was like, okay, I have some clients. Maybe you could do some marketing for them. In the meantime, I was like, okay. So I went and pitched them, got a few clients, and then Greg reached out to me and he said, this is such a long-winded answer, by the way. Um, he reached out to me. He's like, hey, let's go. Let's. I want you to meet somebody. Let's go out to have a meeting and talk about business. I was like, okay. So we go next day, and Elena's sitting across the table from me, and I never met her in my life. No idea who she is. Never heard about her. He never mentioned her. And he sat us down, and looked at both of us. He's like, "You guys don't know each other, but you both need to go into business together, and you need to figure it out." He's like, "I'll help you kind of maybe get some leads if I can, but I think you guys need to take on clients and just see if you guys can run with this. I think you guys would be great together." And so All and I are just like blinking and looking at each other with our big blue eyes, like, "Who are you?"
Again, so Greg.
Yeah, so Greg. And that's kind of the start of it. We took on a client without a name, and we just kind of, and she was launching her business marketing company too, because she just left her career. And so it was kind of this like weird sweet spot that you just kind of had to trust the process
Yeah.
and go. And that's kind of how the journey started.
Well, I know in sitting down with you guys for the first time, because I think I came on board. I was one of your first clients, I
Yeah.
think, and I might have been there before the name was quite created. It was
I got
right
you
in
so many
process.
times. Right. Yeah. He was so
Right.
persistent.
It was, and it's so interesting. And this so well with him especially, it's so interesting because it's the power of connection, right?
Right.
So he knows so many people, and he really does have a good feel for people in terms of working together or
Yeah.
lining people up. And he's always great about connecting people, which I think is great. But I want to step back to a couple of things that you just said as you went on the story. And by the way, I knew it was going to be a long-winded answer. That's why I asked it.
Oh, okay, good. That was
But when I think about, I think one thing, especially women, it's really difficult for women to ask.
hmm
And so when you were saying like you started going through the magazines, you had an event that wasn't, that previously
performing.
wasn't well attended.
Right.
And then you went through magazines and just started DMing people and asking people to come. And then it becomes this great event because you went and did that.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we as women, especially, it's like we just want it to happen. We think it'll happen organically over time. We're willing to work really hard for it.
Right.
But to put ourselves out there to ask
Yeah.
is not always easy.
Yeah.
And it's so important. And I know that even in my life and my career, I've always not carried a lot of shame. I'm like, what's the worst they can say?
Right.
No.
Yes.
If I really want somebody to do something, if I don't ask, they're not going to. They're not just going to randomly appear. And I think it's so important that, you really step outside of your comfort zone to be able to make those requests and ask. And a lot of times the answer is yes.
Yeah.
A lot of times it works into your benefit and for your power.
Yeah.
And the benefit is you're going to get people who attend in your specific scenario. So I think it's so important. And I don't think we do that enough as women. I think we're just afraid to put ourselves out there and ask the question, fearing the word no
Yeah.
instead of, well, what if they say yes?
Right.
And I think for me, I think that's one of the things that's always been so helpful for me. I never really, like I said, carried a lot of shame. I was like, okay, what's the worst they can say? And it's always worked to my benefit. I would say always, but in most cases, it works to my benefit, or I get the result that I was looking for or hoping for, right? So I think it kind of putting the fact that you're even when you moved here. Now, where did you move from? You moved from Milwaukee.
Wisconsin.
So you left all of that snow
I
behind.
left to only come to today, where it feels like Milwaukee, Wisconsin today.
No, Milwaukee is probably 19 degrees
It's
today.
probably negative 30 right now, honestly.
So even 50 here in Naples, which I know is cold for us, is
I know.
now we're warm blooded.
I would take it.
Absolutely, for sure. How did you choose Naples from Milwaukee? Because that's a very interesting move.
It was a very interesting move. It was one of those situations where, um, like life was kind of gravitating. I basically surrendered, and I allowed life to just guide me. It was kind of one of those circumstances. And back in my previous career, I worked with a lot of older clientele. And they always talk about Florida. Everything was about Florida, Naples, retirement community, whatever. And so I was curious. Florida was always on the map for me, or Colorado. And so at the time when I was starting to explore where I want to move, and I committed to changing gears in my career, I flew into Orlando and I rented out a car and basically spent a day in each major city along this coast. So I went to Orlando, Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota, Naples. And as soon as I came to Naples, it was like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. I don't know. I don't know what I saw. I was in Mercado, actually. I didn't know it was a Mercado, but I was in Mercado and I was like, this is it. And so I was like, check mark, done. So I flew back to Orlando, to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I did the following week take a trip to Colorado to explore if I wanted to maybe live there. And it just wasn't it. I didn't feel like I found my people. I really felt like my people and my community was going to be here. And so about a month before, after that, I basically resigned. And then within like 30 days, I just packed up my stuff and then came down here and winged it.
What year was that?
I think that was
Pre-COVID?
2023.
2020, so after COVID.
Yeah, it was right after COVID.
It's interesting. Do you know, especially in this instant, and I didn't know this story, but in this instant gratification that we like live in today, the fact that you would take the time to visit all of these places before you committed to moving, like, it's incredible to me. I couldn't, like, if I decided I was going to move somewhere, I don't know if I would have taken the time to kind of visit different places
Well,
to,
the thing was that everybody gave me a different like answer, like, oh, move to Tampa, oh, move to Sarasota. And there were just so many different opinions where I wanted to collect those opinions and find out for myself.
right,
So I was basically looking for where I felt like home.
right,
And I didn't feel like home until I got to Naples.
right, right. But most people wouldn't do that. Most people are like, "Oh, my friends are here and they
I
say it's
know.
great. I'm just going to move." Or not move actually to take the risk of moving away from everything that your family's in Milwaukee, obviously. Everything that you knew was in Milwaukee to kind of take that step by yourself,
I know.
is to me is like says a lot about you and your person and the strength of you.
I don't know if I would say strengths. I think if you look at my life and my circumstance and my life back in Milwaukee, I was not fulfilled in majority of my you have sections in life. You have your health, you have your friendships, you have your career, you have your family, your lifestyle, things like that, and your relationships. And so my tank was empty in pretty much everything except for my family. My tank was full. And I felt like since my tank with my family was already full and I love my family, I don't need to be there because they're always going to be with me and I have a strong relationship. That's
Right,
that's that's done. That's
right,
checked off. But like if I'm not happy in my career and if I'm not fulfilled in any of these other areas, then I have nothing to lose. I already don't have anything. So like I can't like not have anything less.
right.
Right?
But most people would still settle. Like that's
That's
still like
scary.
it is, but that's again, it is strength. Like I say strength and you say it's not, but
Maybe
it
it is.
really is
It really
because a
is.
lot of people to go outside of their comfort zone again and
Right.
like go to all of these different places and try to find that level of peace and
Yeah.
happiness.
I
A
I
lot of
I knew
people
I knew I
settle.
was gonna move one day. So what I bought a condo in Milwaukee and I didn't furnish it for like 3, 4 years because I didn't
You.
wanna get comfortable and find an excuse to stay.
Right, right.
So, like, literally no furniture but, like, a bed. It was like crickets. I even had 2 maids. I don't know what the maids were cleaning, but, like, cleaning air, dusting air. Oh,
Crazy to me.
it was so stupid, but
Something else I want to go back to that you had talked about earlier, and even with even your family kind of plays into this too about relationships and the power of relationships. I think that one thing that I found in my career that has always helped me is again being able to pick up the phone and call anybody, but being able to pick up the phone and connect the dots of the people that are in my life.
yeah.
I've always been able to do that well. It was a gift. I don't know. It was always I've always been resourceful, so it
Yeah.
was always a gift that people would be like, "Did you do this? Did you?" already done. But like those relationships in my life, both at work, my personal relationships, outside of work, within work, um, random people who weren't friends, but I knew of, or knew, and connecting people. And, we'll go back to Greg in just a second, but y- it's interesting to me that I've always been able to leverage relationships, not use them, but
Yep.
leverage relationships in a way that was a positive for both generally
Mhm.
or whoever was involved in those conversations. And I think relationships are so very important. They don't have to be close to you. But even the cursory ones, even the acquaintances, even whatever the relationships are in your life, how important they are, because you never know who you're going to meet, who may be able to help
Yes.
you or help somebody else that you know, or that you may be able to help with people that you know. And it
Yeah.
all ends up helping each other. And the power of what relationships are. And again,
Yeah.
I don't think people necessarily leverage relationships in the way that they should or could. Um, and it's not a using, it's like
It's
you
no.
just know, like people that could be benefited, all
Right.
sides can be benefited, or sometimes there's really no benefit. It's just somebody needed help at a particular point in time and you're able to help them through whatever they're going through.
And people love helping people.
They do.
It's
They
like it's
do.
like they feel good about it.
They do. They
They love
do.
it.
They
You love
want
it,
to
everybody
feel people love to feel not only they love to help other people, but they love to feel like they're
wanted and
needed.
needed, yes.
Wanted, needed,
Right.
but like they're needed. And I
Yeah.
think that's so much lost today because we're
Right.
so caught up in everybody's caught up in everybody gets caught up in their own lives and I get caught up in my own life too. But it's sometimes it's like looking a little bit beyond and
Mhm.
those relationships just how I don't know how impactful they could be. And I bring this up with you because obviously I've known you for a hot minute
Yeah.
and I also while I get to know you every time I'm around you like I learn something new.
Mm.
And so like you've always been like I've always if I haven't told you, I've always like I think you're wicked smart, you're so creative. You're one of those like utility people that can kind of do so many you're like you do so many different things and you have like there's just within you there's so much talent and so much beauty and I just like every time I'm around you and I like learn a little bit more about you, I'm like, "Hey, uh," it's like almost like a light bulb goes on and
Yeah.
I'm like, "You're just this amazing human being
Thank
with
you.
this
I
bright
appreciate
light."
it.
And so, as we were like working, and I want to, if you don't mind, if we could talk about some of the health challenges that
Yeah.
you've had over the
Would
last
love to.
last year. Um, one of the things that you and I have talked about, and when you came to me in March and said we're launching some new services, and you had said, "Would these services, do you think they would help me?" And I
Yeah.
was like, and you told me some of the symptoms that you had, and we'll kind of get into them. And I stopped and I was like, why didn't she call me earlier?
Mm.
And I know I told you that.
I know.
I'm like, why didn't she call me earlier? And I think that, again, as we go back to level of importance of relationships and again, not using relationships, but leveraging them
Right. Yeah.
for, especially when you're in a time of need. And I think a lot of women, men included, but I think a lot of people in general, when they are in a time of need, they really don't want to ask.
No.
They don't want to ask for help. They don't want to ask for advice. They want to kind of sit in it.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important for people. We could save ourselves so much going backwards instead of going forwards. So much time in not, I don't want to say like a depressive state, but so much time in a negative feeling or a negative energy that we don't have to because we've decided we're strong enough, we're big enough, we got it. What's it going to
It'll
be
blow
fine
away.
tomorrow? It's all going to go away. Well, the reality is most of the time it doesn't just go away without somebody's intervention.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important that we stop saying we're so strong and that we don't need anybody and that we don't need anybody's help or we've got this or we don't want to bother people or we feel like we're imposing on people because I think most people, like I said, they want to feel needed. They want to feel wanted, needed. They want to feel like they can help.
Mhm.
And I think that we've just got to get away from this thought process of I'm big enough and strong enough and I'm just going to handle it on my own. And I am like the worst at this. It's only recently that I've really started to open myself and open my doors to say, you know what, I'm not okay and I'm going to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just really difficult. So as we jump back into your health journey, I just wanted to, call that out as like, this is a perfect example of, I wish you'd have called me 3 months before that. And knowing that every relationship doesn't have to be a best friend
Yeah.
for you to use that relationship leverage that relationship in a meaningful way that most likely is a benefit to both people anyways,
Yeah.
or whoever's involved. But it is so important that we stop like convincing ourselves that we've got this and we don't want to bother anybody. Most people want to feel needed.
I know. I know. I mean, I'm so lucky to have Liquid and you guys for your support. I mean, for so many reasons that we have kind of yet to talk about, really. But it's true. Like I think in my mind prior to coming to you about for some help, I think I forgot that I was not 20 years old anymore
Hmm.
or in my 20s, but and that it wasn't just gonna go away. And I think every day in my mind I was like, tomorrow will be better, tomorrow will be better. Like I got this. I don't need insurance. I don't need help. Like I'll just eat, maybe I just need to change my diet and then that will help fix everything. And so as stubborn as I was, in hindsight, I wish I can't say I wish because you don't you know what you know, and
Right.
that's it. I'm not gonna punish myself. Um, but I am so grateful for the timing. It was actually perfect timing because you were just starting Ozone, and I'm sure you would help with the IVs and everything else that you have, and the peptides. But the Ozone was just like the perfect timing that you guys launched that, and then Alyssa shared her story about her health issues and how Ozone helped her. And I was like, okay, well, and I we joke about, I called your front desk because I didn't want to contact you and ask you for because I knew you were gonna be like, oh, maybe I can,
Yeah.
whatever. And so I called the front desk. I'm like, where is um Crystal at? And I was like, I talked to Crystal. She's like, no. Angel's like, you can talk to me though. I was like, oh, hey, well,
I happened to answer the phone that day.
yes,
I think you were hoping that I didn't. Of
yeah,
course, I wasn't going to pass you off.
I know,
But it's like there's just people in your crew. I mean, it's just people in your crew, and that there's an inner circle, and you don't have to be best friends to have an inner
yeah,
circle.
I know,
But we work together a lot, and we do a lot together, and that relationship is important to me. You as a person are
yeah,
important to me. And I think that's the other thing. Like, I don't think people necessarily understand where they rank with
right,
people, and a lot of times you're more important than you think you are.
yeah,
And I think that that's also an important takeaway too.
yeah,
But I want to go back to, so let's talk about your symptoms a little bit and sort of how you were like, because as you talked about Alyssa with Ozone, Alyssa had suffered a brain injury
right,
in a car accident, and so started doing hyperbaric chamber and Ozone, and really the oxygen related therapy helped her brain in a recovery state.
right, and NAD,
Exactly, NAD, and is all those things that helped her in a recovery state, and that's kind of what you heard
right.
on this podcast in terms of her with this brain injury, suffering this brain injury, and the things that she did. So let's talk a little bit about your symptoms and what kind of where you are now.
So, so right before I moved to Naples, I felt like a few weeks back, I decided unwillingly, but I did it. So it was a will to go get a COVID shot. And so up until that point, my health was great. Never went to the never was sick. Perfect health, just great. No issues. Never had headaches. Whatever. And then I had the COVID shot. And then the day I moved to Naples, I got COVID. So I drove, what is it, 20 hours straight here in a blizzard. And it was like January 4th. That was the day I moved down here. And I had COVID and I was sick. Um, and pretty much every day after that, it was a whole new symptoms that I never really had to deal with and didn't know how to deal with. And it was always a new issue. And so for the first several months, um, I got severely sick. My whole like face was like inflamed. I mean, my face looks so gross. I just want to walk around with a bag over my head. It was disgusting. And it was just I can't even go back there. I'm like, I think I suppressed that
Yeah,
memory.
I was gonna say I can see it in your face.
It's suppressed. I'm not entering that zone. Anyways, moved past that. After that, it was feelings of numbness in my body. But I would lose feeling my right side of my body. I would actually leaving one of Greg's events alone, fortunately. But I like lost the feeling of my legs and my arm, and I'm literally swinging my leg to take a step and like to my car. And so Finally got to the car, like, I had to lift my legs to enter. It was so bizarre. And I'm still like, and I still wasn't like, "Oh, it's no big deal. This is just what it is. It'll go away." And that continued for several months. Then the weakness, the fatigue, the dark cloud over my head, the weakness started entering in, and that stayed up until this point. Um, and then after that, it was the layers of my vision for 3 months. I think that's really when I called you.
Yeah.
I woke up one day and I had, like, severe double vision. I mean, the night before, it was fine. The next day, I woke up and I saw 2 heads, 2 of everything, and, like, anything past my hand, I couldn't see. Couldn't drive. Um, yeah, it was just terrible. And so that was around the time that, you had launched Ozone, and so I called you, and then we ended up doing Ozone, but then after the Ozone, it was, I lost my voice for 3 months,
Yep. Yep.
and then that came back, like, January 1st, and now
Yeah.
I'm having a podcast.
Yeah.
So
I know.
those are all my symptoms.
As
I
I
think
told
it
you.
was way more I think it was way more, but a lot of it's suppressed in my head.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you came in and you finally had a voice, and I was like, oh my, it was like 2 days. I think
Oh,
I saw you like 3 days before,
yeah.
and then it came back into voice, and I was like, I forgot how much I missed you. It's shocking.
Honestly, yeah,
I was like, forgot how much I missed you and how
I do
much I
have a
liked you.
newfound appreciation for my voice. Like, even when I'm talking now,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wow, this is
Yeah.
amazing."
Well, you didn't have it for like 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was like you just woke up and it was gone.
Yeah,
You went to the
I woke up,
doctors.
like, 1 or 2 AM, and I had this, like, pounding, like, bulging migraine, which I've never had
Right.
migraines. And it was so tender, like, you couldn't even touch it. It was so tender. And I thought it was my hair. I thought maybe my hair was on too tight.
Right.
Um,
What did you
and
just say?
because I went to bed with, like,
Oh,
it's like my hair was, like,
I thought you
3
were tying that
times
to your
in.
voice. I'm like, wait a second.
No, I thought that maybe that's why the migraine
Yep.
and whatever was cutting off circulation. And so, and then in the morning, I was trying to talk to Mason because he was like leaving for a trip, and it was like nothing was coming out. I was like, darn it. And it was like few days after my vision came back.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. It was like all tied. And you went to the doctor
and I went to the
and they
doctor.
put you on steroids.
The doctor put me on steroids and antibiotics.
That did nothing.
I did nothing, and then they said if my voice doesn't come back in a few months, go see a speech therapist. Um, in which case I did not go to did not go to a speech therapist. I went and did Ozone, um, which helped improve my voice. And then when I had my double vision, I didn't have health insurance. And so that was one of the major reasons why I came to you as well, because I didn't have a health insurance. I couldn't get an appointment with a neurologist for several months. I couldn't see anybody for several months. And so I think I was trying different things, but I was getting snippets of answers. But I was like, okay, well, I need to feel better like right now. And so, of all the doctors that I've seen and of all the random things I've done, the most consistent thing that has helped me so far is the Ozone, the IVs, the NADs, all that, like coming to you,
Yeah.
really coming to you.
Yeah.
And, it's, I've never been a believer in the Western medicine, culture.
Yeah.
It's not because they're all bad. I think doctors
Right.
are great for like surgeries and emergencies. But like you think you'd go into a doctor and have the same experience I have coming to you.
Mhm.
Like that's my expectation.
Right.
Like this is my person. You're my primary.
Right.
You're supposed to care for me.
Right.
You're supposed to come up with ideas and like help me figure it out
Yeah.
what's issues. But it's just not the case.
Yeah.
It's so bare minimum and I hate them.
Well, I think a couple
Sorry.
of things. No, you're
I don't
totally,
hate them.
no,
Leave that
it's
off the
totally,
podcast.
no, it's totally fine. Well, I think the challenge is funny when I had Polly on the other day and he was going off on a tangent too. And he was talking about doctors and, what we talked about is it's not the doctors.
I know.
It's the how their hands are tied.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they want to run tests. They want to do different things. The insurance companies say you can't do that. It costs too much or they don't have all of the right symptoms. So I think it's not it's not the doctor. It's how their hands are tied. And then when you tie that to prescriptions and the medications and how much things are put out that cost,
Mhm.
they're tied. Their hands are tied in a lot of cases. In my case, I'm not tied to insurance, so
Right.
but you have to pay for it. It's a
Right.
cash pay
Yeah.
system. And a lot of people can't necessarily afford. So like there's just this rough balance of I, it's not that people don't care. It's just that in one way there's no handcuffs and you can do whatever you want and not whatever you want, but
Right.
within reason we work with you and we figure it out, but it's a cash pay system. The other side there where there's insurance involved, which most of us here in the United States are insurance is all that matters, right?
Mhm.
Where they can't order certain tests. You have to have X number of symptoms. Even if you have those symptoms, they still might not cover.
Right.
I'll go back to a point in time where, Polly had a food allergy and a food or sensitivity to milk and soy. We had to do a prescription formula. Nothing. He couldn't eat any. He was a newborn. He couldn't eat anything. I literally had to fight the insurance company to cover his prescription formula, and we had good insurance.
Wow.
So it's like their hands are tied.
Yeah.
And so when you're dealing with with red tape,
Mhm.
it becomes a challenge, right? Um, but I think also, and if I go back on the COVID shot for just a second, and you saw a doctor, you had an MRI done.
Mhm.
They
Oh, yeah, that's right.
specifically said that your symptoms were directly related to the COVID vaccination.
Yes. I mean, every doctor, every person I talk to, they kinda, like, mumble and say it,
Right.
I don't know if they're allowed to, they're probably not allowed to say it,
Probably not.
but they all said, like, yes. Every doctor, every person medical person I talked to this past 2 years and, all
Right.
said, I've seen I have numerous patients that are all dealing with COVID vaccine symptoms.
And so what ozone does is ozone's kind of going in there and cleaning out. It's like detoxifying. And so it's and NAD the same thing. So
Right.
ozone and NAD are the two things that you've been doing. And so those two things go in there and detoxify cells at the mitochondrial cellular level. And so we're kind of trying to go in and clean out what the vaccination has done. And I think what I don't like, this isn't a vaccination debate. This isn't should we be vaccinated or not be
No.
vaccinated. This isn't I'm not anti-vax. My
Right.
son has been vaccinated. I myself received the COVID vaccination. My son's received the COVID vaccination. If
We're all
I
different. Yeah.
right, if I knew today if I knew then what I know today, I wouldn't have vaccinated for
Right.
COVID, but I would have definitely vaccinated my son in
Right.
other areas. Um, it's the world that we live in. But
Right.
I think what's important that comes out of this conversation is the vaccinations impact everybody differently. Not everybody's going to get sick from the COVID vaccination.
Right.
However, people can have negative side effects from
Right.
the COVID vaccination or from any other vaccination. I've talked to others who've had different experiences with other vaccinations, and I think it's important that people understand that you can have some negative reactions to vaccinations. And if you're experiencing symptoms, there are alternative things that are out there that could help. You just need to research.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's ozone and NAD and what we do. There could be other things. There's other symptoms and other things, and who knows what comes out of these. But there are things out there that are alternative, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the masses. And even in talking to you, is that people understand that there are different ways of healing. Traditional medicine doesn't have all the answers, and I don't know that there's a doctor out there that would say he has all the answers either. But traditional medicine does not have all the answers. They're treating symptoms because that's what they have to do
Yeah.
based off of the restraints that they have. And in a lot of cases, it works,
Yeah.
and in some cases, it doesn't. But even in the cases that it works, I do think that there are other ways of treating certain things that are outside of
Yeah.
the traditional space because the medicines that we put in our body aren't always good for us either.
Well, that was the biggest thing. I mean, I think that's why I was so hesitant and slow in seeing a doctor, and going down that route because A, I didn't I already knew within myself that, okay, if I went to some what are they gonna do?
Right.
Like, what are they gonna do?
Right.
The what
Right.
are the
Right.
You figure it out, and then what? You're literally gonna prescribe me medication,
Right.
and then what?
Right.
And that was the biggest holdup, and that's why I was so gung ho about doing this.
Right.
And it was a little bit of a hard sell to some friends, maybe some family too. Like, Mary, you should go see doctor. Like, why are you going to get IVs or drips or whatever? I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, this is actually helping me. I'm feeling better, and therefore I can do more things and be productive. And this is healing me because my body's fighting a disease or whatever it is.
Right.
Um, what's the point of going? Why are you so putting a doctor on a pedestal? Like, what are they going to do?
Right.
Aside from like you go to a doctor for testings.
Right.
And then from there, you're kind of your own advocate to figure out how to heal your own body.
Right. And I think too, all the things that you've done are very natural based. When
Right.
you think about ozone, it's oxygen. We're
Right.
just entering oxygen into your system. When you think about the IVs that you do, the vitamin IVs that you do, we're just entering vitamins into your
Mhm.
system. NAD is already a coenzyme that exists in your cells.
Yeah.
They're just producing less of it as you get older. All of those things are natural to your body. When you take a medication, you don't know what's in that
Right.
medication. Yes, you can Google it and look it up and do all this stuff, but it's medication at the end of the day. It's foreign to your body.
Right.
It's not always good for your body.
Yeah.
And I myself didn't know. I've been on Synthroid for 25 years. I've had a thyroid issue for 25 years. I had no idea of the side effects of Synthroid.
Mm.
So I've stopped taking Synthroid and now take a natural medication for I take a natural medication for my thyroid, but it's natural based and not a medication.
Right.
That's a medication.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just important for people to realize that everything that you've entered into your body to heal it, let's say it didn't work. No harm, no foul.
Right.
Something else got fixed in the
Right.
process. I promise that.
Right.
But it not even medications that you go on, the rounds of medications that you go on may not work, by the way. So everything that you did was something natural that you put into your
Yeah. body.
So if it
And
didn't work,
there were so many things wrong at the same time.
right,
It's like, where do I
right,
where am I going? Like,
yeah,
which section, which doctor am I gonna go to fix and figure out and come down to what it is the real issue? And then I now recalling while we're talking is I also had I developed poor posture from from sitting on the couch and working on a laptop, 'cause for marketing every single day. I wasn't sitting at a desk. And so my neck kind of
right.
moved forward and I had this tightness in my shoulders. I also had really terrible shortness of breath. I mean, I still do a little bit today. Um but I remember once going on oxygen and starting that process with I know Alyssa said do commit for 4 weeks, once a week for 4 weeks. And I did it for 3, and after the 3rd treatment, I was like, "Oh, I can't even explain it." After the 3rd treatment, I felt like my lungs, opened up. I could, breathe. I wasn't, consciously thinking about I'm, mentally always thinking, "Breathe, Mary, breathe," 'cause it's so tight. My lungs opened up. My After the 4th treatment, the knots in my back, my shoulders dissolved. I literally canceled my membership to, getting massages in my neck. It dissolved, my neck,
Right.
went back to, normal. Um, Mental clarity was amazing. I felt like a dark cloud, when it, vanished. I was, I was productive, I was happy. I just felt n I felt like I never felt like that in my entire life before.
Well, I can tell you this is why I do what I do for these stories right here. And I don't have them with every single one of my clients for sure, but
Well, they
these are
should
the
come once a week
stories.
then.
These are the stories that I live for. And the reason I do what I do is because I really want to help people get better. And
Yeah.
I want to help people live healthier lives. And listen, there's a lot of things in my life and my diet and my, you know, in how I live my life and stresses. And I can't keep it all away and I
Right.
can't fix it all overnight. But if I can make an impact, a small impact on everybody and or everybody that's around me, and especially my
Yeah.
circle, to help them feel a little bit better. I mean, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Right here is why I do what I do.
Well, it's interesting because when my vision came back, I started with you with my vision. As soon as my vision came back, my mouth was taped because I had no voice. So I couldn't even
Right.
talk about it for 3
Right.
months. And I'm trying to tell people I'm feeling better visually. I'm yeah, doing sign language. Um, but I'm just I also I'm a big advocate for your business and your type of business and what your services are because I also come from a background of and curiosity of health and wellness.
Yeah.
And I guess the oxygen thing wasn't really a hesitancy for me because I do you know Wim Hof?
Yeah.
So I did Wim Hof's oxygen breathing technique a few years back, and so I watched a lot of his content, so I knew oxygen was a big source for healing your body.
Yeah.
And so hearing that it was like a direct link. So hearing that you guys had ozone therapy, I was like, whoa, this is similar. This is something cool.
And that's what's important on the oxygen side is it really does viruses and bacteria can't live when it's surrounded with oxygen. Like it
Yeah.
can't when it's overcome with oxygen, it can't live. And I didn't know that myself until the last few months. So as I'm like, as you bring these new services in, you can't like my practitioners, of course, they know it. They've got it down. They have medical background, but I don't.
Right.
So it takes me a little bit of time. And then as I read more and as I hear more, then I'm like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's oxygen is like, it is a major player in health, is a major player in health and how much it can help you just by getting it in your
So what
system.
what I understood was no matter where the inflammation or disease or issue you have in your body, the ozone goes directly to that spot. So it's like localized
Yep,
almost
it does.
naturally.
Yep, it travels. I mean, it travels everywhere. And
Right.
what you did with MAH, it travels everywhere. So we oxygenated your blood and we pushed your blood back through your system.
Right.
So it's traveling everywhere, but it's definitely going to stop at those places that it needs it most.
It's so
And
cool.
so with your brain, your liver, your kidneys, whatever it may be, is it the cure all end all? Absolutely not. But is it going to help?
I think it is. I mean,
Is it going to, can I say it's in every case? No. But I can certainly say in a lot of cases it's going to help. And even if you're healthy, completely healthy, entering oxygen into your system, for me, like I'm not dealing with anything medical right now, but I can tell you over the last 8 months, I've been doing ozone and I am like
I know you're
different
usually a Spitfire, but you're like a whole
on steroids.
caliber. Yeah, you're on steroids.
It's on steroids these days,
Yeah.
especially these last 2 or 3 months. It's just been crazy. And I've tied that. I know, for me and my journey, I tied it with methylene blue.
Yeah.
And that has definitely, taken my journey to a whole nother level in terms of my mental clarity and mental wellness. For me mentally, I don't feel as down. I don't suffer the deep lows anymore and the high highs. I'm kind of like in the middle for the most part. Not to say I don't have good days and bad days because I do. But I'm kind of trending more in the middle, which before I was trending more at the bottom, more at the bottom, more at the bottom, and sometimes more on the
Yeah.
top.
Oh,
But with a 12-year-old in a business, like I am constantly there's 50 fires every single day, and I can't get ahead of those fires. And now I've come to the realization that I'm just okay living in those fires. I couldn't have had that realization 3 or 4 months ago. I couldn't have. So it takes a little bit of time. But once you get going, to your point, it took you to the third to kind of get there. But once you get going, the benefits are just truly amazing,
amazing.
even if you're healthy.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, Mary, I'm so grateful that you've come into my life.
Same.
I honestly, like, as I've worked with you, both you and Elena with Pink Shark, and you two are amazing. And you two are an amazing combination. And Greg was 100% on point putting you two together. You are the yin to the yang for the two of
Yeah.
you. But I adore you. I think you're this amazing human being who has so much talent, so much creativity, and you're so smart. And I just love being around you. I love being in your presence, and I'm so grateful we've been able to provide any source of relief, in your health journey. But more importantly, as a personal friend of mine, I just love you.
I love you too,
So I am
honestly.
so grateful, and and for anybody looking for social media or marketing,
Full
I
plug.
highly recommend Pink Shark. And if you want to see any of their content, go out to my social media page, Liquid Naples, out on Instagram and Facebook. Their content is amazing. Meri does all the filming, does a lot of the editing behind the scenes, and Elena, her partner, is a true champion on the marketing side.
Amazing.
So smart, always constantly bringing me ideas. Both of you are constantly bringing me ideas and reworking things. And every time she says it doesn't look good, and then she sends me the after, even though I'm like, it's fine, it's fine. She's like, it's not. Then I see the magic behind it. Not.
Perfectionist. She's
She
perfect.
is.
We have somebody on board who's a perfectionist. Otherwise, it'd be like, I'm like, let's scoot it. Let's do it. She's like,
Yeah.
no, must be perfect. I was like, thank goodness we have somebody like that.
I know it is so true. You two are perfect together, and I'm grateful that you guys are generating
Yeah.
the marketing for my business. So if anybody's looking here in the Naples area or outside of the Naples area, they certainly service areas outside of Naples. Please feel free to look them up. You can DM me at Liquid Naples, or you can find them at Pink Shark Media out on Instagram and Facebook. I love them both dearly. So thank you so much for joining me today on the
Wait. I wanted to give a plug to you
Oh, please.
too.
Okay.
I know it's your show, but
I don't let
everybody,
you close my mouth. You know that.
anybody who's listening, thank you for listening to this amazing, beautiful conversation. I am a huge advocate for Liquavita, Angela, Alyssa, Bree, everybody on that team. I am just so blessed and grateful. I'm literally sitting here because of them. Not that I was maybe I was dying. I have no idea. This is to be determined. But I'm just so grateful for your support, your caring, for being my primary when I didn't have a primary. And go get ozone, go get those IVs, go get those things work. Like they actually like build your body to be optimal and strong and healthy, clear mind, all these things that we all want. And they don't take too long. I mean, it's like 20, 30 minutes out of your day for a month or a week for you to feel amazing. So like why not? Just go do it.
Thank you. And if anybody's listening has questions about anything that we've talked about during this podcast, feel free to DM me as well. You can find me at the Everyday Health Mom out on Instagram and on TikTok. So please go out and do that. And if you've enjoyed hearing what you've heard today, please like, subscribe, and share. Too many S's and then the L throws me off, but like, subscribe, and share, please. I'd love to have you join us on future podcasts. So thank you so much. Meri, thank you. I love you.
Love you.